This video is a long video. It kind of gets in depth into what's inside a Phantom 4 Pro. So you might want to skip ahead instead of watching everything in detail. I do include everything in the video for those that want to get right down to the nitty-gritty of seeing this thing torn down right to the battery cage. And as always, this video is for entertainment purposes only. A while back ago I crashed my DJI Phantom 4 Pro and decided to try to repair it. I put on a upper and lower shell and new landing gear. I also had 4 new motors that I had here that I had ordered before, and because I had quite a few hours on the motors, I decided to replace the motors with the new ones I had here. After I had put everything together, I found out that I had an ESC error on 2 of the motors, and one ESC board runs 2 motors. So I decided to replace both of the ESC boards. Then after putting things back together, I was getting an error on the vision system, the left rear camera not working. And what I found out is I had a break in the ribbon cable on the left rear vision system camera, and I believe I probably did this myself. Because I can remember trying to examine the cable, and I can remember moving this with my finger, and the break turned out to be right in the spot that I tried to move it. The vision system camera actually mounts right here, is held on by 2 screws, and then the cable is glued to this arm right here. And then the cable terminates right underneath the lower vision system cameras and the ultrasonic sensors right here. I also found out I have a crack in the cage right here, the battery cage right there. And so going on eBay, I found a battery cage. I was calling this the center assembly right here before. It's actually called the battery cage, I guess. And I found a new one on eBay, and it already has the vision system cameras mounted right to it. So I decided to buy that. So now what I'll be doing is taking the components off ahead of time and getting it ready for when the new battery cage comes in. I'll just replace the battery cage and the vision sensors. So that means taking this thing back apart again, but I'll be taking apart some different components. So I'll make a different video so you can see how everything is put together. The first thing I'm going to be taking off is the lower vision system cameras and the ultrasonic sensors. And those are located right here and right here. And there's actually 4 screws. One here and one here. One here and one here. But because I was curious and took the camera off beforehand, I already have 2 of the screws out. So we'll take the other 2 screws that are left out. And let me grab my magnet here. Nope. No cooperation. So we take the old pliers and just pick it right out. And so I'm just going to grab the assembly here and pick it up. And I'm going to flip it over. And we can see we have ribbon cables here. We have one right here, right here. There's a ribbon cable right here, right here. And then here's the one ribbon cable that the spot for the ribbon cable that I took off already. And so I'm just going to take a screwdriver and pry up on the ribbon cables, on the connectors. And now we have the the ultrasonic sensor and the lower vision system cameras, the whole assembly off. That's what it looks like. So we'll label a piece of paper and set all that stuff aside. And now I'm just going to disconnect the two ESC ribbon cables. We have one right over here. And we have one right over here. And now I'm going to take my 2mm Allen wrench on a screwdriver handle, and I'm going to take off the 4 battery cage screws. We have one right here, we have one down in here, one right in here, and one right down there. So let's go ahead and get those screws removed. And we'll get the last screw off here. Okay, I have the 4 screws removed. Now I'll take them and set them aside. And now I have 2 antenna boards here, and what I did is I put a little bit of silicone right here on the side between the board and the shell to hold these boards steady right here. So I'm going to have to recut that silicone. So I'm going to grab a tool that I have here somewhere, and this is just a little hobbyist tool here, and I have a sharp edge right here, and I'm just going to take it and stick it in the in between the board and the shell, and just recut that silicone that I put in there. And once I have it the board apart, or the battery case apart, and I lift this whole thing up, I'll kind of clean up the silicone that's left in there, because eventually I'm going to have to put more silicone back in it. And I don't know for 100% sure, but my guess is the purpose of the silicone is to just keep this board from vibrating around as this thing is flying. Kind of keeps it steady a little bit. Okay, I think that's probably good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the battery case up along with all the stuff that's mounted to it. And so let's see here, let's come back out a little bit, and we'll just grab it by the side here, lift up gently, there we go. Now what I need to do is I need to get access to these ESC screws. Are going to have to come out, and we have 4 screws here for the board right there, and then a couple screws right here on the other ESC board right here. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is take these screws out here and get that ribbon cable out of the way. This board here, right here and right here, we have the compass connection. Let me see if you can see this. I'll come in a little bit. There, that's probably better. We have the compass connection right here and right here, and we plug our GPS cable in right here. There we go, we got the screws out, and we'll grab the bracket that holds the cable on. Maybe we'll grab it. There we go. And let's take my screwdriver here, and we will pry this other ribbon cable up. Of course, prying the ribbon cables, you want to be pretty gentle with them so you don't damage them like I did the other one. Now what I do is when I take screws out, I take a post-it note and write down what the screws came off of, and then put everything on top of the post-it note. That way everything gets back in the area that it needs to be in. And now I'm going to take the 4 screws out here, and underneath each screw is a rubber washer here. There we go, there's one. Two. 3. And 4, and now I'm just going to pick these little rubber washers out of it. Oops, I guess I'll be finding that one on the floor. Let's see, I know what I need. I need my tweezers. Okay, now this board here is loose, you can see, and I'll just take everything and all the screws and the rubber washers and put them on my little sticky note. And I'll be taking the screws out of the ESC, and ESC stands for electronic speed control on the motors. Grab that with my fingers, there we go. And I'll take my screws and put them on my little sticky note there. And I'll take the cable bracket. There's a little cable bracket here. Whoops, there we go. That holds on the cable. I'll take that off and set that aside. Now this cable right here can fall off, so you want to keep an eye on it. In fact, you know what? I am just going to take that right off. I'm going to take it off and set it aside. And we do the old flipperoo. we have the other ESC board, and we'll have to take 2 screws out of that. And let me grab the bracket right away, the cable bracket. And we'll grab the screws and put those aside. And then I'll remove the cable. I've had this thing apart so many times, I'm getting pretty good at it. And at the base of each of the ESCs, right here and right here, I've put some silicone on them. Originally the boards came with silicone on them, so I have to take I'm going to take a utility knife and just make a little slice in the silicone there, and then the board should come out. So let me back the camera out a little bit here. There we go. And we have a utility knife. Just make a little slice. And you got to be careful, as usual. Number 1, you don't want to cut your fingers off. Number 2, you don't want to damage the board. Better damaging the board than cutting your fingers off, though. Now with the silicone cut, we just pull the board right out and let it hang there. We'll flip the thing around. Again, we have silicone right there and right there. So we'll make a cut right there. And a cut right here. And I can see the board's giving it up already. So, there. So, now we have the upper shell. Here's the 2 ESCs and the battery board here for the battery connection. And we have the battery cage, which I guess is the official term for it. This is the silicone. I'm going to have to take this silicone off, and then when I put it back together, I'll just put a little blob of silicone back on there, on that side, and then on that side there. These are the 2 forward vision cameras right here and right here. And when I was doing a vision calibration, on the lower left hand corner you can actually see what these cameras are seeing, and that's how I found out, well, besides the error message that the left rear vision camera wasn't working, when I actually was doing the vision calibration, I could see in the lower square in the software there on the computer that there was no picture coming back from the left rear vision camera, which was right here. And so that's when I started investigating the ribbon cable and found that the ribbon cable was broken. The ribbon cables are actually a little bit brittle, and so you have to be real careful when you're touching them. A lot more careful than I was. And also, now that I have this out, I'll point out right here, this is on the battery cage, a little piece that was broken out. So with the new battery cage coming, everything should be just like new. Now here in the upper shell, we can see right under this foil here is our GPS module, and the cable comes right through. This is actually shielding. The cable comes right through and then plugs right into the bottom of this board here. And that would be right here. There's the plug-in right there. So if you have to do any work with the GPS, you have to remove this foil here, and then the GPS module is screwed to the upper shell. So basically I have left the battery cage, and I have a couple boards here, the main board and another board here, and I have a couple antenna, and that would be right here, one on each side, and those all have to be removed from the battery cage when the new battery cage comes in. And so the first thing I'll do is I should also mention that I take my phone and take pictures of everything too, in case I need to go back and look. Like for instance, you take everything apart and then all of a sudden you go to put it back together and you think, well, what side was this camera or this antenna on, what side was that antenna on? You got a white wire here, black wire here. So with a picture I can go back and look and I can say, oh yeah, okay, this antenna was mounted over here, this antenna was mounted over there. Whether it makes a difference or not, I don't know, but you always want to try to get stuff back the way it was. So I'll start taking this stuff here apart now. And so now to remove this top board here, it looks like we've got 4 screws, one here, 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 and here. And I don't exactly know what, I guess what order this should come apart. So I'm just going to start by taking out these 4 screws here and see what happens. A lot of this, when I do this, it's kind of learn as you go. Sorry about that if I just got my big head in the way. I just got my hair cut today, and boy, I don't know what it was that the haircut lady put in my hair, but man, does that smell good. So I thank the haircut lady for that. There's also on this other screw here, there is a ribbon cable that's passing close by it, so I have to be very careful of the ribbon cable. And this one here, let's see. I think I'm going to try plan B. I think I'm going to try to, before I try moving this board, I'm going to take these cables off here. This cable on this side and this cable on that side. So what I have to do is get underneath this tape, and I can do that with my little screwdriver. And we'll peel that back. And let me see if I can get under this. Yep, right there. And the one of the other videos I did, you probably remember, or you probably see that one of these cables had started coming unhooked. And I noticed that when I had taken it apart, so I put the cable back in straight. So I have the tape peeled back, and there's a little plastic tab right here that's kind of sticking out independent of the cable. So I'll grab that and just pull the cable back, I hope. Let's see if this one will cooperate. Nope. So let me take a little closer look with my magnifying glass. Okay, so what I found out is they do pull out, but you have to pull them out straight. If you don't pull them straight, they tend to move off to the side a little bit, and then they don't want to come out. So let me see here. I actually can't get my fingers on that cable, so I'm going to do something against my better judgment here and see if I can get something to grip it with. right here. There we go. I'll have to take a look at that cable real close and make sure I didn't damage it just doing that. And now, let's see. We can look underneath it, and I see I have a bracket right here. It's holding a bunch of stuff on. I guess we got a screw right there for sure, and right there. So let me just take those two out. Every once in a while I got to stop and make sure I'm still in the picture here. Now, oh, we got a third one right here, I see. Now, let's see what's happening here. We got a little bit of silicone underneath this bracket right here, I believe. Or some adhesive. Oop. Let's see here, right there. Okay, so there's our bracket. There's a little bit of adhesive sticking onto it. Now, let me pop that cable off. That helps me there. And then I can take the last screw out. On the top board there. And this is actually a vibration mount here. A little rubber vibration mount. You kind of saw that on the Phantom 3. On the gimbal mount, they'd use these little rubber mounts. And so now basically we have a board right here, and we have our two antennae that have to come off, and then everything will be removed from the battery cage. And now the next thing I think I'm going to do is remove the two antennas. And so I'm just going to take my screwdriver and pry up on the antenna wire. There we go. And now, being as we're going to get a new battery cage, we are going to take the antennas off. And we just had one screw holding each antenna on. And now we'll put those to the side. So now the new battery cage that I ordered, I know it's going to come with at least two front vision sensor cameras on it. I don't know if the rear vision cameras are coming with it or not. So anyway, I don't have to take these off. So basically I can just kind of pry the cable up here. And separate that from the board. And separate that from the board. And now there's two little tabs, one right here and one right here. And I'll zoom in on them. and we can see they're different. There we go. So if this is the front of the battery cage right here where you see the red, and this is the rear, we see this little curvy tab right here is going to be on that side, and the kind of straight tab is going to be on that side. Now, by removing a couple screws on the board here, I think probably 6 screws I would bet, we're going to be able to remove the main board, I think. Or at least what I'm calling the main board. It looks pretty main to me. Really, when you actually start taking these things apart, they aren't nearly as, I mean, they're complicated, but it's not as hard to work on them as what I thought it was going to be. Well, I'm going to guess this one has to come off. And let's get the help of the magnet here. Sometimes they don't all want to come out. Okay, we have the screws removed. I'm going to take one more closer look at it and then see if I can't get the board off of it. I don't see anything else holding the board on, and so now comes the big board removal. So we're just going to gently, I can hear some what sounds like adhesive on the bottom of the board there. And it looks like it's coming up. Yeah. Maybe not adhesive, but it made a noise like it had adhesive on it. Anyway, we have the board removed. You can see the underside of the board. For those of you that are interested in it, that is the bottom and the top. And we can see the battery cage right here, and these are the front vision sensors right here, and we have the rear vision sensor right there, and then this is missing. This is the one that I took off. So I can actually say I've had this thing taken down to the bare minimum as far as the parts go, and it's actually very interesting to me. I didn't think it was really all that hard. You just have to use a little bit of finesse. You can't, you have to be careful and gentle with the parts. Yeah, now when the new battery cage comes back in, we'll get the rear vision sensor replaced and get this thing put back together. Well, I got my battery cage in already. Very, very fast shipping. And we can see that we have the 2 rear vision sensors attached already. And we have the 2 front vision sensors attached already. And so we're going to take our board and get ready to mount it to the battery cage. we go. And we'll get some screws started. And let's see here, we need to make a little adjustment on the board. There we go. And we'll get another screw here. And we have a total of 6 screws that have to be put in. There we go. And one last screw. And I got to make sure that my little tabs here, I've got the little curved tab right here on the right side. And before I tighten everything down, I'm just going to take a look and make sure everything looks good and is seated right. And it certainly is looking good. So I can tighten down the screws. And I'll just double check them. And I realized that on some of the video, I was watching some of the video, and it looks like I'm sticking the screwdriver in and totally missing the screws. The reason that's happening is because I'm trying to get the best shot on the camera, so that doesn't always mean that I can see what I'm doing. And so on some of the shots there, the screwdriver control probably isn't the best, but the reason for that is because I'm trying to get the best shot for the camera to see. And now I'm going to try to put some of these connectors back on the circuit board. And usually just by getting them in position and giving them a little push, they kind of just, oh, there's just a very, very light snap. And leave that one for a little bit later. And we have the front vision camera ribbon cable connected. There we go, that ribbon cable's connected. Now I'm going to take a closer look at this to make sure I get this cable routed right. This is the one fragile cable that I broke before. And now I ended up doing it again. This is one of the ribbon cables here, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but I ended up tearing this cable right here. Right there. So I am going to have to get another cable. So what that is going to do is change the order of our reassembly while I wait for another cable to come in. And so we'll take the upper shell and the battery cage here, and we'll kind of move the ESC and the battery board here into position. There we go. And what I'm going to do is turn it around here, and we'll get our battery board in position right there, and hold on to it just like that with my thumb. And let's see. Seems to me last time I put these together it was kind of a challenge. But let me get things prepared a little bit better. Okay, I have my 4 screws prepared with the rubber washers on them. And I'm going to attack these things from the side. Like so. And I'll just get these screws started here. It's much easier. You won't be able to see what I'm doing, but it's much easier for me. And once I get them started, I'll tip it up so you can see what's going on. So I have the 4 screws started. Let me move it out a little bit right there. And I'll kind of tighten them down. And let me just check everything over. And so now we got all 4 screws right here put in, and I'm pretty happy with the way they went in. And so now I'm going to connect the ribbon cable here and then put the bracket on. So we'll get that in position. And press that on. And then let me get the bracket right here. That is going to hold that in place. And I've got a very small screw to get started. So, see how we do here. I'll use my other finger to steady it. And there's 1 screw started. Move the bracket back into place. got to set it down in order to get the other screw started on the screwdriver. These are pretty small screws. There we go. And we'll swing the bracket back into place there. Wow. I'm getting a little bit shaky here. There we go. So we'll get the two screws tight there and check the bracket, and that is tight. And now what we're going to do is turn it on its side and put the ESC boards in place. And the first thing we'll do is get them started in the tabs there. There we go. And I'll get one screw started on my screwdriver here. And I have to set that down. And actually I'm just going to start it on the side. Like so. And then to keep things from flopping around, I'm going to get this other board started right away. And now we'll give that another try. Get the tabs going down. There we go. And now, let's see if I can get the screw started. And we have success. Loosen that back up a little bit and shove it down a little bit more in the tab, and then tighten it back up. And then we're going to have to get our cable put back on. There we go. And we'll get it put back on the top here. There we go. And we'll get our bracket. And we got that started. So let me see if I can get a screw on my screwdriver. Stay there. Okay, we have success. So we'll check the other screw, make sure that's nice and tight. And it is. We'll flip the thing around. And we'll install our other cable. And let me tip that up so you can see it. I'm going to have to switch hands to do this. And there we go, I felt it snap in. We'll turn it around. And we'll snap it in the other end. You can kind of feel it fall into place right there. And I felt the little snap. Set that down. Get my screw ready. And we'll put the bracket on that holds the cable in. And get the screw started. And we got that tightened down. Check the other one. And it's good. Now it's time to get some silicone. And I've got some silicone out now, and I'm just going to take a little bit. And we'll go right on the little tab here in the circuit board. Let me get a little bit more. And we'll work a little more in the crack there. And let's flip it around. A little dab more here. And we'll get that right there with a little bit. And then we'll get a little bit more on the other tab right here. Okay. Yeah, now we're going to put the ultrasonic sensors on right here and the lower vision cameras, lower vision system cameras. So to do that, I'm going to tip the thing sideways here and try to get the cable started. I'm going to tip this around so I got a little better view here of what's going on. And there I just felt the one cable snap in. And let's see, that's the trickier one right there. I think that is in. And now let me get the end cable in. There we go. Now let me just double check everything. Everything is on. So we're going to take our screwdriver, we're going to tip this up right here, and we're going to start a screw. Okay, we have one started. I'll I'll start the other one, and sorry about my head if it was in the way there. I don't know if it was or not, but then we'll get the third screw here, and we'll be very careful of this ribbon cable. And we have that screw started. And last but not least, we'll get this corner screw here. That one there, I have to push the cable back just a little bit. And this one I'm going to tighten right away. There we go. And there again, I can't see the screw, but in order for you to see it, I have to put it in camera position. And I think we have all 4 screws on and tight. Now I'm going to take my magnifying glass and I'm going to check all the cables, make sure I didn't damage any. And now what we're going to do is lower the battery cage down. And so make sure nothing is getting pinched. And everything looks good, so I'm going to take my 4 screws with the 2mm, let's see, let's put this one in first. I have my 2mm Allen wrench, and we'll get that started. Sorry about the hand in the way, but and I got a wire that's kind of in the way, so we'll get that moved. I gotta move that around so I can see it. And we had a wire that's gotta get out of the way. So the screw can get started nice and straight. Let's do this. There we go. And we'll move this around so I can see what's going on. And I got a few more wires I gotta move out of the way here. There we go. Okay, now before I tighten them down, I'm going to take a look around and make sure everything is good. Make sure nothing's getting pinched. Make sure our cage here is looking good, and it is. So I think I can go ahead and tighten everything down. dropped into place. And I still got that little silicone blob in there. Wants to get in front of the screw hole. There we go. There. Now when the battery cage is tightened down, we want to make sure our cage gap here and the upper shell are all nice and good. And it looks like we are. And I'll have to take some time and clean out the silicone from right here and right here where the antennas mount. And now it's time to put the antennas back on. So put the one antenna right there. Let me get my screwdriver. And the antenna has to tuck behind a little tab there, so let me make sure I got that tucked behind there, and I do. So we'll start the screw and get that tightened down. And then we'll turn it around. And let's see. We'll set that into place. Let me make sure I'm behind the tab, and I am. We will get the screw. And we'll tighten it down. Okay. Now, let's see here. Let's move that back over, because it's time to get the silicone out again. And we have to take a little blob there. And let's take a little more. There we go. Guess I just took that out of your sight there. Now we'll put some silicone on the other one. And there we go. I'm just going to double check this other one over here. You know, I think I want a little bit more on there. Just to make sure. There. Okay. And now we'll hook up the antenna wires. And we'll just grab that and line it up. And push it on. We heard a little click there. And we'll do the same with the other wire here. Get it in position there. Let me double check that. Yep. There we go. Felt it click in. Kind of run the wire down below there. Okay, I'm going to take a little time and get some wires routed. I think I'm gone just about as far as I can go till I get that other cable in that I ruined. You'd think I'd learn by now, but the other thing I'm going to do is get my magnifying glass out and take another look at all the rest of the cables and make sure everything is good. But once the other cables come in, I should be able to finish putting this back together. And finally we're back at it to see if we can't get this thing completed. It's February 2nd, and we started out this morning at 13 below zero. It took a while to get the cables. I was playing tag with the Federal Express man. So the one thing I learned is to be very gentle with the cables. And so now the first thing I'm going to do is put one of these cables on. If I can get a hold of it. And this one here. Whoop. This particular cable here has the R on it. So, be very gentle. And we'll just plug that cable in. Sorry about the hands, but there's really no way I can put the cable on without covering the cable up as I put it on. And now we're going to go to the other side and put the cable that has the L on it. Oops. And what I had to do is I had to get my face right up in there so I could see what I was doing. And when you push them down, you can feel the cables. You can feel just a little clicking when the cable seats. In order to avoid damaging that cable, I took the cable right off, and I'm going to attach the second screw. It's holding the main board down. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten both of them. And now I'm going to re-put the cable on. And now I'm going to try to reattach the cable. And I'm going to do that by feeding that right through. And getting the cable into position. Let me turn this around so I can see what I'm doing here. And I know my finger's in the way, and I apologize for that. Should be close right there. Oh. Okay, we're going to try it from another angle. Okay, and I think my cable's pushed down now. And now I'm going to put my bracket back on that holds my antenna wires and my two cables down. And that's held by 3 screws. So we'll get the one screw started. And there's a second screw. And the third screw. Okay, we'll flip the board over, and as I flip it over, I'm going to run my cable in between the bracket and the board there, like so. So now if we turn it over there, we can see the board right here, cable's running in the middle, and then there's my bracket right there to hold the board down. And now I will replace the last 2 screws here that are holding the bracket down for the main board. And we'll just get the one started. And this one's getting a little close to the cable here on this side, so I'm going to be careful I don't nick the cable. Or get it pinched. I am going to have to turn it this way so I can see myself what's going on there. Now what I'm going to do here, I decided, is I'm going to take my screwdriver and hold the cable just a little bit away very carefully, because I don't want to get this cable pinched in the screw. So because I'm going to have to angle this so I can see it pretty well, I'm just going to turn the camera off and do it offline here. So what I ended up doing here is I took this small screwdriver and kind of held the cable out of the way while I was putting the screw in, being careful not to tear the cable or pinch the cable in the screw or the screw head or tear the cable. I'm not quite convinced I have the reassembly sequence right. There may be a better way to put it together, but this way seemed to work. And I guess as I was doing this, I kind of had a thought that came into my head. If you look at all these little pads right here, all these are connection points that are running through this cable here. There's a lot of little tiny connection points, and what I'm wondering is how many crashes there are where this connector gets jarred and maybe doesn't make connection the way it should, and so you're getting errors. And I guess from now on, the first thing I'm going to do, if I would ever have a crash again, which I hope I don't, is I'm going to really pay attention to these cables and make sure that the cables are where they need to be and they're connected properly. If we remember in the first video that I did, the one ribbon cable like this was kind of pulled out of position. And so I could see how that could create a lot of problems. But yet it might be something that you might not notice. The same way with cable damage. You know, if the cable is damaged, I would think you could probably get some errors, and that would probably just be a cable replacement for a fix. If we look at the main board is rubber mounted, so the main board can move around. And the cables are a pretty tight fit, but yet, if the thing took a jar, I could possibly see something happening there where you might lose connection. Now if I flip the cable over here, you probably aren't going to be able to see it just because of the nature of the cable here. But there's kind of a hard plastic flap right here. And when I push the cable in, that's what I'm going to want to get my finger on, is this hard plastic flap here. And then the cable needs to go in straight, very straight, into the connector. So I'm going to try to do that with the camera on. And if I can't, I'm going to have to turn the camera off and move the connector into a spot where I can see what I'm doing. We also see this white line going across here, and I'm assuming that's how they want the cable, the distance they want the cable pushed in. So let's just give it a try here. Yeah, and that actually pushed in fairly easy, and it did go right up to the line right there. So now I'll take this piece of tape here and put this tape back down. I'm kind of surprised that cable pushed in a lot easier than the original cable did. And now we'll flip this cable over and do the same thing. And you're going to have to excuse my fingers once again. Okay. And we'll put the tape back over. I'm actually going to move the tape here. I think I need to center that a little bit better. There we go. Okay, I think that step is done. And now it's time to make the lower shell to the upper shell. And I'm just going to kind of look around here and see if I can't make sure my cables are in the place they need to be. Kind of tucked in and out of the way. And so I kind of got everything a little pre-lined up there. The other thing too is that I'm going to watch as I assemble is this battery cage here. It has to be centered. And when I put the upper shell or the lower shell on, I got to watch and make sure that it stays aligned right there too. So watching these tabs as I bring the lower shell down. You know those like to hang up. We'll start to lower the shell on here. And if my head gets in the way, pardon me for that. The first thing I have to do is come down here and get my compass wires hooked up before I can connect the two shells together. Yeah, let me just get that cable down there. And we'll get lined up here. And I believe my little long nose pliers here, needle nose pliers, seems to work pretty good. But we have a wire in the way, which I'm going to have to move out of the way. Yeah, okay, I got that wire moved. And I'm going to very gently grab my compass cable here and see if I can't get it started. There we go. I'll spread the needle nose out a little bit and just push it right in. You can feel it click into position. And now we'll go with the second compass wire here. And I'm going to have to move the wire down a little bit out of the way again. So let me just move it like that. I'll grab a hold of the wire here. Ooh, there we go. I just felt that click into position. Now let me get my wire back into position where it's nice and comfortable in the bracket. There we go. And we're looking good there. Now we're going to bring the two halves together. And I'm going to have to watch all the wires here to make sure we aren't pinching any wires. And as I'm bringing the upper and lower shell together, I'm watching my gap right there to make sure that stays aligned. And we're starting to look pretty good. Now before I snap the shell together, I am going to take my trusty flashlight and I'm going to look down each of the holes here and make sure I don't have wires. There's 8 screw holes here. I'm going to make sure that I don't have any wires crossing any of those holes, because that is going to pinch them. And we don't want that. And I'm looking really good so far. Now I'm going to take one look all the way around here where I can see a little crack there yet. And there's a wire right here that I think is a little bit close, so I'm just going to take my screwdriver and push that away. And that looks good. We're actually almost sealed on this side. And we're almost sealed on that side. So we are looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is just push the two halves together. And I can see right here, on this half here, on the lower shell, my battery cage is centered right within the lower shell and the battery cage. So I like that. And we'll snap that side together, snap that side together, and everything came together pretty well. So now what I'm going to do is take the screws and run some screws around to take the lower shell and upper shell and bolt those two together. And I'm going to take my 2mm Allen wrench and my little hobbyist screwdriver. And we'll get one started. One screw started. And there's the second screw. There's my third screw. And all the screws are the same size, so you don't have to worry about a long screw or a short screw. And I'm just starting them. I'm not tightening them up at all. Flip it around here. Okay, what do we got going on down here? There we go. Had to snap that back together a little bit. And now I have all 8 upper shell to lower shell screws started. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the vision system cameras to make sure the vision system cameras are centered here. And so far everything's looking pretty good. Oops, sorry about that. Vision system cameras, I'm going to make sure they're centered in the holes here and there's no obstructions. And going over the vision system cameras with a magnifying glass, I did see there was a O-ring that was pushed out just a little bit, so I took my small screwdriver here and I just kind of tucked it right back up into the hole, and everything seems to be good there. So now I'm going to move on. I did not tighten down these 8 screws yet. I'm going to put this camera back on and make sure everything works before I tighten everything down. I've had to take this thing apart 3 times now, so maybe getting a little wiser. I hope everything works though. So the next thing we're going to do is hook up our antennas right here. And looking at the order there, we have the white wire according to what I've written down on my sheet. Our dark gray wire, light gray wire, and the black wire. So now, because this white wire is probably the one that's tucked into the corner and the hardest one to get, I am going to do that one first, I believe. Oh, hold on a minute here, we got a problem. As I was putting the lower shell down onto the upper shell, we've got our steel tabs here, and I had my tabs are tucked into the shell and I have to get those tabs out. So let me see if I can do that without removing the shell, taking the shell apart. And these are pretty flexible, so if I can get on them, I'm sure I can get them out. Let me move in right here. There we go. I'll just move him right out, like so. And then I can get my wires, my antenna wires, just where I need them, which will be on the other side of this tab here. Let's see. I'm hoping you're able to see that. Where am I? Right here? Okay. Okay, we're back in business right here. So I'm going to run my white antenna wire underneath the tab there. Okay, I think we're in good shape now. A lot of things you got to keep an eye on. So now I'm just going to move this antenna wire into position here. And when I get it over to the spot, I'm just going to push down on it. And here's where your patience comes in. Let's see, that looks like I'm pretty close right there. Yep. I just felt a little click as I pressed down on that antenna. Pressed down right on the top here. I could Feel it click in. So we have white and we have dark gray. And these are a little easier to get at. But they got a little spring to them, so that should be pretty close, I think. Whoops. Sprung right off. Okay. For as little as wires as these are, they got a lot of spring to them. So to keep them in position, there we go. I felt that one click right on. And now we got our light gray wire coming up. There we go. I felt that one click in. And last but not least, we are going to put our black wire on here. Oops. Just about had it. If I would have pushed down, I would have had it. But there we go. Okay, I felt that click down really nice. So now we have to put our bracket on. And let me get the bracket and the screws out. Once again, we're dealing with some very small screws, so patience and steadiness is the word. I mean, look at that screw there. That thing is tiny. I don't know if it's focusing or not, but it's a tiny screw. So let me steady my screwdriver as I guide the screw in. There we go. And I'll just put that in there without tightening it up. We'll get the second screw ready and get the bracket lined up. And there we go. So now we can tighten the hold down bracket up. We can tighten the screws. There. We'll check my cable here. There, I like that. I like that. Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, the next thing I'm going to put in is I'm going to put in these case tab screws just so I don't forget to do that. And we got that one there. We'll tighten that down. Yeah, let's see. Got to move that wire out of the way there. And we got that screw in and tightened down. Next, I'm going to put the gimbal on, but I'm just going to put it on with a couple screws to hold it, and I'm not going to see if I can do that. There we go. Push that cable on right there. And I have the bracket right here to hold the cable on. Now once again we got one of these small teeny tiny screws. And we'll get that started. But now I have to find the other screw. And let's get the second screw started here. I hope. You notice there's a lot of hoping when you're trying to get these screws started here. There we go. And there we go. Make sure our cable's pushed down tight. And it is. Now I'll just kind of roll this over and set it into place. And the gimbal just kind of snaps on to the lower shell. Oops. What I'm going to do is take my 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench, and I'm going to drop the screw. Let me move you back out a little bit. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to start one screw. And I'm just going to put in 2 screws for now to hold it. So you remember our 8 screws are still loose here, and I'm just putting in 2 screws to hold the gimbal on. So let's flip it back over, and I'm going to check my battery compartment. Everything's good in there. Battery cage is seated against the upper and lower shell properly. So now comes the moment of truth. We put a battery in and try it. See if all this work is going to make this thing fly again, or whether it's back to the drawing board. Okay, so here we are. Actually, I have a little confession to make. I put 4 screws in that were the wrong screws on the main board. They were too long, so the battery wouldn't slide in. So I had to take everything back apart and put the right screws in. I don't know how I had those screws laying around, but anyway, things are back to normal now, and I did end up putting everything back together. I put the gimbal on with all the screws, tightened all the screws between the upper and lower shell, put the motor screws back in, put the lenses back on, and the little plastic tabs here that are right in the ends, on each of the ends there. And I have it running, and according to the controller, everything looks pretty good. I have signals from 15 satellites while this thing is sitting in the living room. So now let's try to activate the motors and see what happens. Take off. And there you go. Try her again. Take off. And I've already taken time to recalibrate the vision system, being as this was taken apart quite a few times. I did a calibration to make sure the vision system is going to work good. Now, I'm not encouraging anyone to take their drone apart and repair it. Everybody has different mechanical abilities, and I guess each individual knows what their limitations are. But for me, using the 3 P's, it looks like this is going to be a successful repair. I used persistence, patience, and parts. And now I'm back in the air flying.